When you want to distribute points in a volume in geometry nodes, first you convert that geometry into a volume and then distribute points in there using distribute points in volume node. But that is not the case when it comes to animated meshes. When using this method for an animated mesh, you end up getting wiggling points that jump here and there and could potentially mess up your whole setup. If you want an example, check this recent video to see exactly what I am talking about. But since it can be helpful to someone, I decided to make a separate tutorial on how to get a fixed point distribution in an animated volume. Here I have this animated mutant character with its armature modifier. Let's create a new geometry node setup and distribute some points in its volume. First, I add a mesh to volume node, reduce the exterior bandwidth, increase the density and voxel amount. Then add distribute points in volume node and quickly change the density. I plug a multiply node into it and set the first value to something like 1000. Use the second value to add more density. Since there are a lot of points, I add a set point radius node and decrease the size to get a clear look at each point. Now when I hit play, you can see the issue. Points are all wiggling and jumping here and there. The reason for this is our mesh to volume node creates volume on a frame by frame basis, and that volume does not have any connection in between frames. It just looks at the mesh and creates a volume. This makes a difference in our input volume here, and eventually we get these jumping particles. So here is the fix. I rename the mutant mesh to mutant mesh animated. Duplicate it. Rename the second one to mutant mesh still. Remove its geometry node modifier and apply the armature modifier, which gives us a static mesh. Now drag it to the setup of the animated mesh and replace the group input node. And we have distributed points in that still mesh volume. Now to animate this, I duplicate the still object and plug a sample nearest node. This gives us the index number of the nearest surface point. Then take that index and plug it into a sample index node. And I want to get the position value of those points from the animated mesh. Since we are in the animated mesh, I use group input node to access its geometry. I rename it to animated object. Plug it to here and set the attribute type to vector and gets its position data like this. Now I use a set position node and plug this into its position. This will move all the points to their nearest surface point in the animated mesh. But we want the points in the volume. In order to do that, I want to take the distance and direction from point's previous position to its current position. Then we can use that vector to offset each point to go back to its original location. For that, I duplicate this and plug the index into it. Plug still object geometry since we want the original position data. Now I subtract that from the current point's position. This vector gives me that offset I was looking for. And plug this to offset here. And you can see we basically made no difference to point distribution. But when we hit play, this time around we get fixed distribution of points with zero wiggling. If you were wondering how to achieve this, I hope this helps you to get rid of a few headaches. Also, don't forget to see how I made the perfect disintegration setup inside Blender. See you there.